I never thought a 17-year-old's first car could destroy someone's life, but HOA Karen Sullivan's obsession with my son's beater vehicle led to criminal charges, a devastating lawsuit, and her complete financial ruin when she discovered too late that she had messed with the wrong family. At 45 years old, I had worked my way up from a public defender to a successful civil rights attorney, specializing in discrimination cases that other lawyers wouldn't touch. My wife Sarah and I had deliberately chosen our modest home in Willowbrook Estates not for prestige, but because it offered excellent schools for our son Tyler and allowed us to save aggressively for his college education at an Ivy League school, where he'd already been accepted early admission. Tyler was everything a parent could hope for in a teenager. At 17, he was valedictorian of his class, worked 25 hours a week at a local grocery store, volunteered at a homeless shelter, and had saved every penny for 2 years to buy his first car, a 2006 Honda Civic with 180,000 miles, rust spots, a dented bumper, and a radio that only worked on AM stations. But it ran reliably, passed inspection, and cost only $3,200, money he had earned entirely through his own work. Tyler was responsible, respectful, and hardworking. He maintained his car meticulously despite its appearance, always parked legally, kept detailed maintenance records, and was genuinely proud of earning the money to buy it himself. His car represented independence, responsibility, and the American dream of working for what you want. What we didn't know was that Karen Sullivan, the 52-year-old HOA board president who lived in the neighborhood's largest house, had been watching Tyler's car with growing disgust and planning to humiliate him with the help of her spoiled teenage. Children who drove luxury vehicles bought with their father's tech company fortune. Karen Sullivan was a 52-year-old former marketing executive married to software entrepreneur Robert Sullivan, whose company had made them multimillionaires. She lived in a $1.2 million house with a 3-car garage, drove a $90,000 Range Rover, and her twin 17-year-old children, Madison and Blake, drove a $65,000 BMW and a $75,000 Mercedes, respectively. Cars that cost more than most families' entire annual income. Karen's entire identity revolved around displaying wealth and ensuring that only appropriate families lived in what she considered an exclusive neighborhood. The first sign of trouble came on a Tuesday morning in October when Tyler was leaving for school and found Karen standing next to his car with her signature clipboard, designer sunglasses, and an expression of pure disgust, as if she had discovered something rotting in her yard. "Tyler Richardson, we need to discuss your vehicle situation immediately," she announced, with the authority of someone who clearly believed she controlled everyone's transportation choices and life decisions. "Good morning, Mrs. Sullivan. Is there a problem with my parking? Your car represents a serious violation of community aesthetic standards, property value protection, and neighborhood reputation management." Tyler looked confused, glancing around to make sure he was parked correctly in our own driveway. "Ma'am, I'm just parked where I always park. You're displaying poverty advertising that damages our neighborhood's reputation, property values, and community standing in the broader area." "Poverty advertising? Mrs. Sullivan, I don't understand. Your vehicle sends a clear message that this community accepts lower-class residents, economic instability, and people who can't afford appropriate transportation. It's a visual eyesore that affects everyone's property values and neighborhood desirability." Tyler was polite but increasingly confused. "Mrs. Sullivan, it's just my car. I bought it with money I earned working at the grocery store. Working at a grocery store is adequate for a teenager, but driving a car that advertises economic hardship and family financial struggles compromises our entire community's standards and reputation." I had heard the conversation from inside where I was preparing for court and came out to see what was happening. The sight of a grown woman lecturing my son about his car immediately activated my lawyer instincts. "Karen, what exactly is the problem with Tyler's car?" "David, your son's vehicle violates multiple community standards regarding aesthetic maintenance, property value protection, and economic representation standards." "Economic representation?" "Karen, it's a teenager's first car that he bought with his own money. It's a visual advertisement that this neighborhood accepts poverty, economic instability, and families who can't maintain appropriate lifestyle standards. Our community standards require vehicles that maintain appropriate property value representation and neighborhood prestige. Tyler looked embarrassed and hurt. Dad, I can park somewhere else if it's causing problems. Maybe I can find a spot on the street. Tyler, you're not parking anywhere else. This is our driveway. Your car belongs here, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. Karen pulled out what appeared to be an official community standards document with multiple pages, charts, and what looked like property value analysis. David, the HOA board has conducted extensive analysis of vehicle appearance standards that ensure community property value protection and neighborhood desirability maintenance. Vehicle appearance standards? Karen, show me exactly where the board approved rules about what cars residents can drive. The board granted me comprehensive authority to address situations that threaten property values, community reputation, and neighborhood economic stability. Authority to regulate what cars teenagers drive. Authority to maintain standards that protect everyone's property investment from aesthetic degradation, economic signaling, and reputation damage. As Karen walked away with her clipboard, she called back ominously, David, this situation needs to be resolved quickly. Tyler's vehicle is becoming a significant community concern that requires immediate attention. Tyler was clearly upset and confused. Dad, I'm embarrassed about my car now. Maybe I should try to get a loan for something nicer. Tyler, there is absolutely nothing wrong with your car. You earned it, you maintain it responsibly, and you should be incredibly proud of it. Don't let anyone make you feel ashamed of honest work and responsible financial decisions. But Karen's harassment was just beginning, and her children were about to make it much worse. That afternoon, Tyler came home from school visibly shaken and holding back tears. Dad, Madison and Blake Sullivan were making fun of my car in the school parking lot in front of a bunch of people. What exactly did they say? They called it a poverty mobile and said their mom was going to get it banned from the neighborhood because poor families don't belong in Willowbrook Estates. Madison said I should apply for government assistance to get a real car. Sarah was furious. They said what? Tyler, what else happened? Blake took pictures of my car and posted them on social media with captions like, when your neighbor can't afford real transportation and Willowbrook's charity case. Madison was laughing and saying that my car makes the whole neighborhood look like a trailer park. Tyler, did they say anything else? Blake said their mom told them that my car is bringing down everyone's property values and that families like ours should live in apartments or cheaper. Neighborhoods where beat-up cars are normal. I was getting angry, but I kept my voice calm. Tyler, there's nothing wrong with your car, your job, or our family. Those kids have never worked a day in their lives and don't understand the value of earning something yourself. I know, Dad, but it's really embarrassing when they post pictures and laugh at me for being poor in front of everyone at school. You're not poor, Tyler. You're responsible, hardworking, and saving money for college. That's worth infinitely more than any expensive car bought with Daddy's money. But the harassment escalated dramatically the next day when Tyler discovered that someone had placed multiple large signs on his car that looked professionally made and designed to humiliate him publicly. Tyler came inside holding back tears, carrying a stack of laminated signs that had been attached to his car. Community eyesore, violates property value standards, poverty mobile, neighborhood embarrassment, and economic burden does not meet community standards. Tyler was devastated. Dad, everyone at school saw these signs on my car. People were taking pictures and laughing. I was getting very angry. Tyler, did you see who put these signs on your car? I think it was Madison and Blake Sullivan. They were standing by their cars laughing when I found these, and Blake said something about community improvement projects. Sarah was furious. Tyler, what exactly did they say? Madison said that poor people need to understand their place, and Blake said this was just the beginning of helping me learn about appropriate community behavior. I immediately called Karen Sullivan to confront her about her children's escalating harassment campaign. Karen, did your kids put signs on Tyler's car calling it a community eyesore and poverty mobile? David, I wouldn't know anything about specific signs, but your son's vehicle absolutely does violate community aesthetic standards and property value protection requirements. Your kids are systematically bullying Tyler about his car and our family's economic status. My children are community-minded young people who understand the importance of maintaining neighborhood standards, property, values, and appropriate residential behavior. Community-minded? Karen, they're bullying a kid about his first car and posting humiliating pictures on social media. They're expressing entirely legitimate concerns about vehicles that damage property values, community reputation, and neighborhood desirability standards. Legitimate concerns? They're being classist bullies who are humiliating a hardworking kid. They're protecting community standards that ensure appropriate property value maintenance, neighborhood reputation, and residential compatibility. But Karen wasn't finished. Her voice took on a more threatening tone. David, perhaps Tyler's embarrassment will motivate your family to make more appropriate transportation choices that don't compromise community standards. Are you threatening my son? I'm suggesting that families who can't maintain appropriate community standards might be more comfortable in neighborhoods that better match their economic circumstances. Economic circumstances? Karen, we choose to live modestly while saving for Tyler's education. Choices have consequences, David. Communities have standards. Perhaps it's time your family understood both. The situation reached a critical turning point the following weekend when Tyler's harassment turned into something much more serious and potentially criminal. Saturday morning, Tyler went outside to wash his car before his shift at work and discovered that someone had systematically vandalized it in ways designed to cause maximum humiliation and financial damage. Tyler came inside shaking and close to tears. "Dad, they destroyed my car. They really destroyed it." I went outside to see damage that was clearly deliberate, systematic, and designed to cause both financial harm and emotional devastation. Someone had covered the entire car with what appeared to be dozens of bumper stickers reading "Poverty Mobile," "Poor Student," "Economic Burden," "Community Embarrassment," "Trailer Trash," and "Welfare Family." But that wasn't the worst part. Someone had also scratched deep gouges into the paint that spelled out, "Get a real job," "Poor people don't belong here," and "Upgrade your life" across the hood, doors, and trunk. The damage looked like it would cost thousands to repair, money we didn't have readily available. But the cruelest touch was a fake eviction notice taped to the windshield claiming our family was being removed for economic incompatibility with community standards and failure to maintain appropriate lifestyle requirements. Tyler was devastated and humiliated. "Dad, they vandalized my car with all these horrible stickers and scratched mean things into the paint. How am I going to drive this to school? Everyone will see it." I was beyond angry. This was clearly criminal vandalism designed to cause maximum emotional and financial damage. "Tyler, this is serious criminal activity. We're calling the police immediately." When Officer Martinez arrived to take the report, Tyler explained the escalating harassment campaign by the Sullivan family. "Officer, Mrs. Sullivan has been harassing me about my car for weeks, calling it poverty advertising. Her kids have been bullying me at school, posting pictures online and calling me poor. Now someone vandalized my car with all these mean stickers and scratched horrible things into the paint." Officer Martinez was clearly disturbed by what he saw. "Son, this looks like systematic criminal mischief and possibly hate crime harassment based on economic status. This level of deliberate damage and humiliation goes way beyond normal vandalism." As Officer Martinez documented the extensive damage and took photos, Karen Sullivan appeared from seemingly nowhere with her clipboard, designer outfit, and an expression of fake concern. "Officer Martinez, I see you're investigating the community eyesore situation that's been concerning all the neighbors." Officer Martinez looked at her incredulously. "Ma'am, I'm investigating serious criminal vandalism of this young man's vehicle." "Criminal vandalism? Officer, that vehicle has been violating community standards for weeks. Someone probably tried to improve the situation with appropriate signage about community requirements." Officer Martinez stared at Karen in disbelief. "Ma'am, someone deliberately scratched this car with derogatory messages and covered it with humiliating stickers. This is clear evidence of harassment and criminal mischief." "Harassment?" Officer Martinez, this isn't harassment. This is community feedback about vehicles that don't meet neighborhood standards. Someone was probably trying to help this family understand appropriate transportation requirements. Help them understand? Ma'am, this is criminal vandalism designed to humiliate and intimidate. Intimidate? Officer, communities have standards. When those standards aren't voluntarily maintained, sometimes educational measures become necessary to protect property values and neighborhood reputation. Officer Martinez was getting frustrated and suspicious. Ma'am, do you have any knowledge of who vandalized this car? I don't have knowledge of vandalism, but I do know that vehicle has been threatening community property values and should be addressed through appropriate channels and community education. Community education through criminal vandalism? Community education through whatever measures are necessary to maintain neighborhood standards and protect property values from aesthetic and economic degradation. After Officer Martinez left with his report, I made a decision that would change everything. Karen Sullivan had just admitted on record to approving of criminal vandalism as community education. As a civil rights attorney, I recognized exactly what this was and what needed to be done. Tyler, I want you to understand that what happened to your car is a serious civil rights violation and systematic harassment campaign. We're going to hold the people responsible fully accountable through every legal means available. Dad, it's just a car. Maybe I should try to get a loan for something nicer so this stops. Tyler, this isn't about the car. It's about systematic bullying, discrimination, harassment, and criminal behavior. And as a civil rights attorney who specializes in exactly this type of case, I'm going to make sure this never happens to anyone else and that these people face serious consequences. You mean we're going to sue them? Tyler, we're going to destroy them legally, financially, and professionally. They picked the wrong family to target. What Karen Sullivan didn't know was that she had just committed multiple federal crimes against the son of someone who specialized in exactly this type of discrimination case and had the resources, expertise, and determination to pursue it to the absolute limit. Over the next week, the harassment escalated in ways that provided me with overwhelming evidence of conspiracy, systematic harassment, and civil rights violations. Monday, Tyler found another fake eviction notice on our door, this one more detailed and threatening, claiming our family was being removed for economic incompatibility with community standards and listing fake violations including poverty, vehicle storage, economic aesthetic degradation, and failure to maintain appropriate lifestyle indicators. Tuesday, someone reported Tyler's car to the DMV as abandoned and inoperable, resulting in a visit from a confused towing company who had been told the car was junk that needed to be hauled away immediately. Wednesday, Tyler received a fake poverty citation at school, claiming he owed $500 for displaying economic hardship in a professional community, and warning that failure to pay would result in escalated community enforcement measures. Thursday, someone called Tyler's employer claiming he was stealing from the store because poor kids can't afford cars without committing crimes, and demanding that he be fired immediately to protect the business from theft liability. Friday brought the final straw. Tyler came home from school to find his car completely covered in raw eggs, flour, chocolate syrup, and what appeared to be dog food, with new signs reading, "Poor people get poor treatment," "Know your place," and "Economic trash belongs in the dump." But this time, our comprehensive security camera system had captured everything in high-definition detail. The footage showed Madison and Blake Sullivan, along with two other wealthy teenagers, systematically vandalizing Tyler's car, while Karen Sullivan stood nearby watching, directing their actions, and providing what appeared to be supplies and instructions. "Make sure you get the windshield completely covered so he can't see through it," Karen could be heard saying clearly on the recording. "Mom, should we break the headlights too?" Madison asked while pouring eggs on the car. "No, sweetie. We don't want actual property damage that's obviously criminal. Just make it clear that poverty advertising isn't welcome in our community." Blake was laughing as he poured chocolate syrup through the open windows onto the seats. This is exactly what happens when poor kids try to park their junk cars in nice neighborhoods with successful families. Blake, make sure you write "upgrade your life" or "move out" on the hood in big letters, Karen instructed while handing him more. Supplies. Should we call his work again and try to get him fired? Madison asked. Already taken care of, honey. I called 3 times today claiming he's been stealing and that poor families can't be trusted around money. The security footage was absolutely devastating evidence of conspiracy, systematic harassment, criminal vandalism, and civil rights violations. But more importantly, it showed Karen Sullivan directing and coordinating the entire operation. But Karen Sullivan had absolutely no idea what was coming next. Monday morning, I filed the most comprehensive federal civil rights lawsuit of my career against Karen Sullivan, her husband Robert Sullivan, their children Madison and Blake Sullivan, and their homeowners insurance company for civil rights violations under 42 U.S.C. Section 1983, Conspiracy Against Rights, housing discrimination based on economic status under the Fair Housing Act, intentional infliction of emotional distress, conspiracy to violate civil rights, criminal harassment and stalking, vandalism and destruction of property, creating a hostile environment based on economic status, defamation and libel interference with business relationships, assault, threatening behavior toward a minor. The lawsuit sought $800,000 in compensatory damages, $1.2 million in punitive damages, attorney fees, and comprehensive injunctive relief requiring anti-discrimination training and community service. When Karen Sullivan was served with the lawsuit at her front door by a federal marshal, her reaction was immediate, explosive, and provided even more evidence for our case. "What the hell is this?" she screamed loud enough for the entire neighborhood to hear, loud enough that several neighbors came outside to see what was happening. "Ma'am, you're being served with a federal civil rights lawsuit filed in the United States District Court," the marshal explained professionally. "Federal civil rights lawsuit? For what? Protecting community standards?" "Ma'am, I just served the papers. You'll need to contact an attorney." Karen read the first page of the lawsuit, and her voice reached a fever pitch that could be heard 3 houses away. $2 million? David Richardson is suing me for $2 million for maintaining neighborhood property values? Ma'am, you should contact an attorney immediately. $2 million for protecting our community from poverty advertising and economic degradation? The marshal left, but Karen's meltdown was just beginning. She stood in her driveway screaming about the lawsuit for another 10 minutes while neighbors recorded her on their phones. "This is insane! This is America! Communities have the right to maintain standards! David Richardson is destroying neighborhood property values with frivolous lawsuits." Within an hour, Karen was at our front door, alternating between rage, panic, and desperate attempts at intimidation. "David Richardson, you cannot sue me for $2 million for maintaining community standards and protecting property values." I opened the door with a calm, professional smile. "Karen, you're named as the primary defendant in a federal civil rights lawsuit seeking substantial damages. You should contact an attorney immediately." "Federal civil rights?" "David, I was protecting neighborhood property values and community standards." "Karen, you organized a systematic harassment campaign against my minor son based on his economic status. You directed your children to commit criminal vandalism while you watched and provided instructions. That's multiple federal crimes." "Economic status? It's not about economics. It's about community standards and property value protection." "Karen, you called his car poverty advertising and organized criminal vandalism while making discriminatory comments about poor people. I have everything on high-definition video with perfect audio." Karen's face went completely white. "Video? What video?" "High-definition security footage of you directing your children to vandalize Tyler's car while making discriminatory comments about poor families and discussing your campaign to get him fired from his job." "That's not what happened. We were teaching community standards and appropriate behavior. You were committing federal civil rights violations, criminal conspiracy, and systematic harassment of a minor child. And now you're going to pay the maximum legal price for it." Karen tried switching to a threatening tone. "David, I'm a board member of this HOA. I have authority here. You can't intimidate me with frivolous lawsuits. Karen, I'm a federal civil rights attorney with 20 years of experience destroying people exactly like you. You just committed multiple federal crimes against my family, and I'm going to use every resource at my disposal to ensure you face the full consequences. Karen tried a different approach, attempting to sound reasonable. David, let's be adults here. Maybe we can work something out without expensive lawyers and publicity. Karen, I am a lawyer, a very expensive, very successful civil rights lawyer. And you just provided me with the most clear-cut case of economic discrimination and systematic harassment I've seen in my entire career. Clear-cut? David, we put some stickers on a car and tried to maintain community standards. You organized a criminal conspiracy involving multiple people, directed systematic vandalism, attempted to interfere with my son's employment, and created a hostile environment based on economic discrimination. The federal government takes this very seriously, and so do I. Karen was starting to panic, and her voice became increasingly desperate. David, surely we can resolve this without a massive lawsuit that will hurt both our families. Karen, you had multiple opportunities to resolve this when you decided to target my son for systematic harassment. You chose to escalate it to criminal behavior. Now you get to explain to a federal judge why you think harassment, vandalism, and discrimination are appropriate community standards. Federal judge? David, you're not really going to take this to federal court over some car damage. Karen, this is going to federal court, it's going to trial, and I'm going to seek the maximum damages and criminal referrals available under law. You targeted the wrong family. 2 weeks later, Karen's attorney contacted me to discuss settlement, clearly not understanding the scope of what his client was facing. Mr. Richardson, my client would like to resolve this matter without the significant expense and negative publicity of a federal trial. What is Missy Sullivan offering? She's prepared to pay for the damage to your son's vehicle and provide a formal written apology. The damage to Tyler's car was approximately $2,400. The federal civil rights lawsuit is seeking $2 million in damages. There's a significant difference that your client needs to understand. Mr. Richardson, don't you think $2 million is somewhat excessive for some car damage and teenage pranks? This isn't about car damage or teenage pranks. This is about systematic harassment, criminal conspiracy, civil rights violations, and economic discrimination directed against a minor child. Your client committed multiple federal crimes. Federal crimes seems like a strong characterization of what amounts to neighborhood disputes. I have high-definition video evidence of your client directing her children to vandalize my son's car, while making discriminatory comments about poor people, plus documented evidence of her systematic campaign to interfere with his employment. The federal government tends to take civil rights violations against children very seriously. Mr. Richardson, my client is a respected community member who is trying to maintain neighborhood standards. Your client is a criminal who systematically targeted and harassed a minor child based on his family's economic status. She's about to become a cautionary tale about the consequences of discrimination and harassment. Karen's attorney called back the next day with a noticeably different tone. Mr. Richardson, we've thoroughly reviewed the video evidence you mentioned. My client is prepared to make a more substantial settlement offer. I'm listening. $75,000 and a comprehensive formal apology, plus agreement to cease all contact with your family. Not interested. Karen Sullivan organized a criminal conspiracy against a minor child that included vandalism, harassment, employment interference, and systematic intimidation. She's going to face the full legal consequences of her actions. Mr. Richardson, my client is willing to go to $150,000. Your client is going to pay the full $2 million in damages, plus criminal referrals, plus federal monitoring, plus community service requirements. The video evidence is devastating, and federal judges don't look kindly on adults who target children with systematic discrimination and criminal behavior. 3 weeks later, as the deposition date approached and criminal referrals were being prepared, Karen's offers became increasingly desperate and her attorney's tone became increasingly panicked. Her attorney called with progressively higher settlement offers that showed how terrified they were becoming. $200,000. Mr. Richardson, My client is facing serious financial hardship from legal expenses. $350,000. This would represent a significant portion of my client's liquid assets. $500,000. My client is prepared to liquidate investment accounts to resolve this matter. $750,000. Mr. Richardson, this lawsuit is destroying my client's family financially and socially. $1 million. My client is willing to take a second mortgage and liquidate retirement accounts. But I wasn't interested in settling for any amount. Karen Sullivan had systematically targeted my son, traumatized him with criminal harassment, committed multiple federal crimes, and shown absolutely no remorse. She was going to face every possible consequence available under law. Mr. Richardson, surely $1 million is sufficient to resolve this matter and provide justice for your family. Your client systematically terrorized a 17-year-old child, committed multiple federal crimes, and showed no remorse whatsoever. She's going to trial, she's going to lose, and she's going to pay the maximum price available under federal law. Mr. Richardson, my client has learned her lesson and deeply regrets her actions. Your client hasn't learned anything except that actions have consequences. If she had shown any genuine remorse or understanding of her behavior, we might have discussed resolution. Instead, she's continued to justify her actions as community standards. She's going to trial. The deposition was scheduled for a Thursday morning, and Karen Sullivan's complete breakdown under questioning provided everything I needed to guarantee victory at trial. Karen's deposition began with her attorney trying to minimize her actions and portray her as a concerned community member. But within 2 hours, she was providing the most damaging testimony I had ever heard from a defendant. Mrs. Sullivan, why did you tell my son Tyler that his car was poverty advertising? I asked calmly. I was expressing legitimate concerns about community property values and aesthetic standards that protect everyone's investments. When you used the phrase poverty advertising, what exactly did you mean? I meant that vehicles displaying obvious economic hardship send negative messages about community standards and resident quality. Resident quality? What do you mean by that? I mean that successful communities maintain standards about appropriate residents, appropriate vehicles, and appropriate lifestyle indicators. And Tyler's car failed to meet your standards for appropriate lifestyle indicators? Tyler's car clearly indicated economic hardship that's inappropriate for a community like Willowbrook Estates. Mrs. Sullivan, did you tell your children that Tyler's car made the neighborhood look like a trailer park? I may have expressed concerns about vehicles that compromise community reputation and property desirability. Did you organize the vandalism of Tyler's car? I didn't organize vandalism. I organized community education about appropriate standards. Mrs. Sullivan, I'm going to play the security footage of you directing your children to vandalize Tyler's car. The video was played in the conference room, and Karen's face went white as her own voice could be heard clearly directing every aspect of the criminal vandalism. Mrs. Sullivan, that's clearly you telling your daughter Madison to make sure you get the windshield completely covered, correct? I was trying to make a point about community standards and appropriate behavior. By directing criminal vandalism of a teenager's car? It wasn't criminal vandalism. It was community education about appropriate vehicle standards. Community education that involved covering a car with eggs, flour, and chocolate syrup? We were trying to encourage better choices and community awareness. As the deposition continued for hours, Karen's explanations became increasingly unhinged and provided devastating evidence of systematic discrimination. Mrs. Sullivan, did you call Tyler's employer to try to get him fired? I called to express concerns about employee reliability given obvious economic hardship indicators. You tried to get a teenager fired from his job because his family couldn't afford an expensive car? I expressed legitimate concerns about employees who display economic instability that might affect job performance. Mrs. Sullivan, did you tell your children that poor people get poor treatment? I was explaining that communities have standards and consequences for failing to meet those standards. Standards that involve harassing teenagers about their economic status. Standards that protect property values from inappropriate displays of poverty and economic failure? Mrs. Sullivan, do you believe that people who can't afford expensive cars shouldn't live in your neighborhood? People should live in communities appropriate to their economic level and lifestyle standards. Willowbrook Estates is designed for successful families with appropriate vehicles and lifestyle indicators. Her attorney was frantically trying to signal her to stop talking, but Karen was in complete meltdown mode and couldn't control herself. Mrs. Sullivan, do you believe that Tyler Richardson deserved to be harassed because his family chose to buy a modest car? Tyler needed to learn that choices have consequences. If families can't afford appropriate vehicles, they shouldn't live in appropriate communities. Appropriate communities for whom? For successful families who don't advertise poverty, economic failure, and lifestyle deficiencies. The jury was visibly disgusted by Karen's continuing discriminatory rants and complete lack of remorse for targeting a teenage boy. Mrs. Sullivan, do you have any regret for organizing the harassment and vandalism of Tyler's car? I regret that people don't understand community standards. I regret that communities can't protect themselves from economic degradation and inappropriate residence. Do you regret traumatizing a 17-year-old boy? I regret that he didn't learn appropriate lessons about community behavior and economic responsibility. Judge Williams had to call for multiple recesses as Karen continued her discriminatory outbursts, providing perfect evidence of her unrepentant bigotry and complete disconnection from reality. The jury deliberated for only 90 minutes before returning with a unanimous verdict. Guilty on all civil rights violations, $800,000 in compensatory damages, $1.2 million in punitive damages, $200,000 in attorney fees, total judgment, $2.2 million. When the verdict was read, Karen's final breakdown was complete and provided one last display of her entitlement and discrimination. $2.2 million for protecting community standards and property values? Judge Williams was clearly disgusted by Karen's complete lack of remorse and understanding. Mrs. Sullivan, you systematically targeted and terrorized a minor child based on his family's economic status. You organized criminal vandalism, attempted to destroy his employment, and showed callous disregard for his emotional well-being. Your actions represent everything that is wrong with discrimination and privilege. Judge Williams continued, this court sentences you to 2 years in federal prison, followed by 3 years of supervised probation. You are ordered to perform 1,000 hours of community service working specifically with low-income families. You are permanently banned from any HOA positions and required to attend mandatory anti-discrimination counseling. Karen's final statement to the court was her ultimate display of entitlement and bigotry. This sentence will destroy community standards across America. Property values will collapse when poor families can park junk cars anywhere they want. Even as she was led away in handcuffs, Karen continued her delusional rant. When neighborhoods are ruined by poverty advertising, remember that I tried to protect community standards. After Karen's conviction and sentencing, the Sullivan family's world completely collapsed. The $2.2 million judgment forced them into immediate bankruptcy. They lost their $1.2 million mansion, which was sold at auction for legal fees. Robert Sullivan's tech company suffered massive reputation damage and lost major contracts, forcing him to lay off employees and eventually close the business. Madison and Blake Sullivan faced severe consequences at school and in the community. Their college applications were rejected when admissions officers learned about their role in the harassment case. Their expensive cars were repossessed when the family's financial situation collapsed. They were expelled from private school and forced to attend public school, where they faced ridicule for their family's criminal behavior. Robert Sullivan filed for divorce after the trial, citing the complete financial destruction and public humiliation caused by Karen's discriminatory actions. I cannot remain married to someone whose hatred and bigotry destroyed our family and hurt innocent people, he stated in court documents. Karen served 18 months of her 2-year sentence in federal prison, where, according to correctional staff, she maintained her delusions about community standards and property values until the end, insisting she was a political prisoner persecuted for protecting neighborhood quality. Upon her release, Karen was required to complete 1,000 hours of community service working with low-income families at homeless shelters and food banks. Staff reported that she initially tried to lecture families about making better choices until court-ordered counseling and supervision modified her behavior. Tyler was able to continue driving his Honda Civic with pride throughout his senior year in college. The harassment and discrimination had initially affected his confidence, but with counseling and the knowledge that justice had been served, he recovered completely and continued excelling academically. Tyler used a portion of his settlement money to attend Harvard Law School, where he graduated summa cum laude and established the Tyler Richardson Scholarship Fund for students facing economic discrimination. The remaining settlement funds allowed our family to establish a legal aid foundation specializing in civil rights cases for low-income families. The case became a landmark precedent in federal civil rights law, cited in over 200 subsequent discrimination cases and used in law school curricula nationwide. The Sullivan-Vera Richardson case is now standard reading in civil rights courses and anti-discrimination training programs. Federal civil rights organizations have used the case to successfully prosecute similar discrimination schemes in communities across the country, with the video evidence and Karen's testimony serving as textbook examples of systematic harassment and economic discrimination. Today, Tyler is a successful federal civil rights attorney who has won over $50 million in settlements for discrimination victims. He still drives his 2006 Honda Civic to court, now fully restored but kept as a symbol of pride in honest work and perseverance in the face of bigotry.